Well, welcome to our weekly Thursday evening soaring weather analysis and task discussion Zoom. And we're in the middle of our winter educational series. So I want to thank Larry Suter for joining us and being our guest speaker tonight. Uh, I met Larry when I joined NCSA after a long hiatus of not flying. And he got me back into soaring at the NCSA club. And he's been active in that club everywhere from president to chief flight instructor. He's had all the jobs, and he celebrated recently his 4,000th successful landing in a glider. So congratulations on that, Larry. Big milestone.
You
All
didn't
right,
tell the
Larry,
rest
why
of
don't you?
it, okay.
Yeah, it's good. I'm not even up to 1,000 yet. So thank you, Larry. Take it away, and we're all looking forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Okay, so many of you have heard this at air sailing already. But oh gosh, wait a minute. I have to get this down a bit so I can. Okay. Okay, so Dan asked me to talk about aeromedical factors, which many of you are familiar with, but I'm going to be reviewing them. And so this cartoon shows pilot workload at various phases of flight. And one of the important points that have been made about aeromedical factors is that they can be cumulative and they can take their toll during what turns out to be perhaps the highest workload phase of the flight when you're trying to come back in and land. So anyway, let's go. So the Soaring Safety Foundation, what? Soaring Safety Foundation has a list of aeronautical factors. A guy named Ron Ridnour has this list: high altitude soaring, so hypoxia, hyperventilation, middle ear sinus problems, spatial disorientation, stress fatigue, dehydration, maybe even heat stroke, alcohol, drugs, scuba diving. That's their list. And so I modified the list for flying in the Sierra Nevada, a place like air sailing or Truckee or Minden. And that is, don't get sunburned, hypoxia, of course, dehydration, and maybe heat stroke. And to a large degree, for glider pilots, that's dealing with the P factor. So we'll talk about that. There's stress, fatigue, in-flight nourishment on a long flight. It can get very cold at high altitude, and related to that, dress to land out. And so of these elements, getting sunburned, not dealing with the P factor, and it gets cold at high altitude can really distract you, which will impact your situational awareness. So you want to make sure you're dealing with those. And then all these basically make you stupid if you don't deal with it. And so that, which also impacts your situational awareness, but other things. And they will tend to make you stupid towards the end of flight, the highest workload, although it can also have that effect in the middle. So let's talk first about the hypoxia, the big one. That's oxygen deficiency in body tissue, sufficient to cause such impairments such as poor judgment, euphoria, mental confusion, maybe even the eventual loss of consciousness. This is a plot of physiological effects of sudden exposure to altitude. So here's altitude in thousands of feet, 5, 10, 15, 20,000 feet. Sea level down here at 5,000 feet. Apparently, it's been documented that night vision can start to become impaired. If you've ever tried to exercise at high altitude, gone running or something, you find uh, there's an old saying, my lungs burned. And I remember running at Los Alamos, which is around 7,000 feet, where I experienced that. And apparently, if you don't have oxygen, feelings of unreality, dizziness, tingling can set in. And this curve corresponds to this plot, which is labeled time to loss of consciousness. Okay, so even at 20,000 feet, where the air density is about half of what it is at sea level, even at 20,000 feet, you can start to go unconscious, and according to this, within perhaps 10 minutes. And as you go progressively higher, it goes quicker and quicker. And this is why you're supposed to carry a bailout bottle when you're flying at higher altitude, very high altitudes in ways which I guess we don't have the letter of authorization anymore, but you could possibly pass out by the time you're waiting to get low enough in altitude to pull the ripcord. Pulse oximeters, which give us blood saturation levels, are pretty common these days. You get one on Amazon for $10. And so it begs the question, what personal minimum should you have? There's a physician in AME named Bruce Shen who publishes a lot on the flying forums. And way back many years ago, he was asked, what's, flying with an oximeter, what should I look for? And he says 90% is the uniform confirmed informed consent standard. Apparently, Embry-Riddle did experiments in hyperbaric chambers with students, and around 88% O2 saturation in their blood, they started making mistakes in a simulator that was inside the chamber. So 90% is what the goal is. And as a anecdote, I have an acquaintance who a number of years ago climbed Aconcagua in South America. It's 22,000 feet. He had a pulse oximeter, and so when he got back, I asked him what his saturation level got down to. He said, well, as we were going up, it was down to 80%, I think. But I was writing down the numbers, but somehow I lost the paper near the top. So anyway, that's an example of what happens at higher altitudes. So here's a plot. The red curve is blood oxygen saturation. This is from the Air Force. Okay, and it's blood oxygen saturation versus altitude. And then this is the oxygen partial pressure. Okay. And so at 12,500, it's 90, just under 90%. Okay. At 14,000, and this is density altitude, it's 85%. Okay. And and then Aconcagua, the top of it, it's around 72%. And somewhere in here, my acquaintance lost his piece of paper. Okay. So anyway, what personal minimum should you have? We talked about 90%. So I did some data points several years ago, and in the Bay Area, I was 98%. At air sailing, I was 94%, which also is what I tend to be at Truckee. With oxygen at air sailing, I was 12,000 feet, I was 96%. But I took it off for 5 minutes and I plateaued at 88%. Then I put back on the oxygen, and 5 minutes later, I was back at 96%. And at 16.5, I didn't take off the oxygen. I was 94%. Now I have a part of a two-seater that'll take me up that high. So maybe I'll do that experiment with another pilot. And so, like many other people in this meeting, the personal minimum is to start using oxygen at takeoff when I'm taking off from the Sierra Nevada.
Hey, Larry,
Yeah.
if going back to that table, what would it be at air sailing? Because the number you have is for arriving there, but what if you measured a day or two later? Does it go up?
Uh, I'll see. So I've measured it, several days, and it tends to be 94%.
Okay, it's steady.
It jumps around a bit. So, but it never goes up to 98%. So, okay. So, several years ago when I did this, I was quite pleased to see I was had about the same oxygen saturation as your typical really healthy Air Force guy. I don't think that's true anymore, by the way. So, uh, there we go. So, anyway, the FARs spell out when oxygen must be used by the pilot in command. And as you know, after 30 minutes, you're allowed 30 minutes between 12,500 and 14,000 feet, and at all times above 14,000 feet. At air sailing, there's camp fee and we have oxygen, and we provide training on how to fill a tank and how to do it. And remind people that if you have a flow meter, check it regularly during the flight. I want to talk a little bit about density altitude because, I just plotted these as if my altimeter reading was the right altitude. But quite often, when you look at the skew T plots, you find that the temperature at, say, 14,000 feet can be considerably warmer than a standard atmosphere. At 14,000 feet, it's what, three, 2 degree. Anyway, at 14,000 feet, it's actually below 0 degrees Celsius as a standard atmosphere. And you can be as high as, 15, 20 degrees Celsius. And every degree Celsius is another 120 feet of density altitude. So when you're at 14,000 feet in the Sierra Nevada in the summer, you can have a density altitude of 16,000 feet or so.
So does the indicated altitude make any difference? So that'd be pressure altitude or GPS altitude? What do we?
So density altitude is pressure altitude, set it to 29.92, and then look at your outside air temperature, and then add 120 feet for each degree you are above standard atmospheric
It's still
temperature.
correct for temperature.
Yeah. Yeah. So at sea level, standard temperature is 15 degrees Celsius, and I recall it drops 2 degrees standard temperature. It's not an adiabatic lapse rate. It's 2 degrees per 1,000 feet. So that's 28 degrees. So that's minus 13 degrees. If I did the math right, at 14,000 feet is a standard atmosphere. But if you're 10 or 20 degrees Celsius, say 10 degrees, you're, about 3,000 feet higher. The density altitude is 3,000 feet higher. The air can get quite thin. Okay. And that's part of the reason why 14,000 is the FAA's rule. Okay. There are various types of oxygen systems, and at air sailing, at the camps we provide training. This shows the so-called mustache type or oximizer type cannula. These go into your nose, obviously. This plugs into this type of controller. And it's worth knowing that some of these controllers have two scales. If you're using an oximizer, which builds up oxygen between breaths, so as you're breathing out, it's actually building up oxygen in here. You don't need as high a flow rate, and so use the left-hand scale, the shallow scale. If for some reason you have a constant flow cannula, and I've actually never seen anyone with a constant flow cannula, but in that situation, you'd use the right-hand scale. Uh, and it turns out if you did like I did very early on, you use the wrong scale with an oximizer. If you use the right-hand scale, you'll find that after a long flight, the inside of your nose starts feeling a bit like it's sunburned. So use the proper scale if you do have two scales. Like I said, I've never seen a constant flow cannula used in an airplane. The way you wear them is shown by this cartoon. You put the curvature towards your face. You insert the two probes into your nostril, and then you can hang it around your ears. Just like sunglasses, your ears are there to support the cannula system. Okay, and this shows it that way. Or another way people wear it is to put it behind their neck and tighten it there. Okay, so that's the cannula. And then finally, as many of you know, there's this type of system, an electronic mountain high system, which provides a controlled puff of air, oxygen rather, as you're breathing in. And the higher you are, the bigger the puff is. It works very well. And when I did my measurements that I talked about, where I went from 88% back to 96%, I was using a mountain high system. And it's worth knowing that if the battery fails, they become constant flow devices, in which case you would have a constant flow cannula. The mountain high cannula does not have that oximizer gizmo, the mustache. So this shows kind of the oxygen flow for the three systems. The red one is a constant flow system. Well, this is your breath, I'm sorry. That's your breath. It's a little bit longer than 3 seconds, about 18 breaths per minute. So during a constant flow, you're getting oxygen while you're breathing in, then you're wasting it out here. Okay. The oximizer builds up oxygen in the mustache, and you're breathing it in or coming out. And then it accumulates it during this time, so you're not really wasting as much. And then the electronic mountain high system gives you a measured pulse at the very beginning of your breath. It's kind of spooky how it works. I know just as you're starting to breathe in, you hear a click and you feel a pulse. And the higher you are, the more of a pulse you'll feel. Okay. And it's you can try and spoof it, and it's very hard to spoof. When you're breathing in, it gives you the pulse just at that right time. Okay. And it's, like I said, it's depending on your operator, it's scaled to your altitude, or it's scaled to your altitude somewhat higher. Okay. And once again, the oximeter will tell you how you're doing. So the FARs spell out when oxygen must be used by the PIC after more than 30 minutes between 12.5 and 14, at all times above 14. Are you allowed to fly, say, at 14,000 feet for 29 minutes and dive below 12.5 and climb back up again? Well, legally you can. I don't know if that's very wise. But I want to have a bit of an aside from the usual talk, because the question is, are there breathing techniques to increase your blood O2 at high altitude? You shouldn't do this instead of oxygen, but what if you're in a jam where it's an interesting question? And the reason I'm wondering is that many years ago at cross country camp, one of the campers, a retired Air Force guy, stated that breathing out forcefully with your mouth closed, that is pressing, can increase your blood O2. And I've always had that in my mind, but I kind of wondered if that was true or not. Well, now there's AI. So, in honor of the talk, I asked AI, "Dear AI, I've heard that breathing deeply, then pressing by trying to breathe out but keeping your mouth closed can increase your blood oxygen. How effective is this?" And AI said, "The technique described is known as the Valsalva maneuver. The Valsalva maneuver does not increase blood oxygen levels. Instead, it causes significant changes in blood pressure and heart rate by increasing your inner chest pressure, temporarily reducing venous return to the heart." Doesn't sound good. And apparently it can actually reduce oxygen saturation, particularly in people who have some health issues. And it isn't recommended for the purpose of raising blood oxygen. Okay. However, AI, a little more probing, says deep breathing, taking slow, deep inhales and exhales, can temporarily raise blood oxygen saturation. Okay, so what's that? Especially, it can't raise it at sea level because typically you're around 98%, but at high altitudes, it just, it's possible that can have an effect. For example, at the sort of high altitudes where we need oxygen, slow, deep breathing can increase the oxygen blood saturation, say from 80 to 87 or 89%. And this is a plot from a paper, okay, which I'll show you, and they were breathing at 6 breaths per minute, okay, and one was done in the Alps. It was a team from Italy that did this from a hospital. And then in the interest of science, they went to Kathmandu, and a bunch of them were at Mount Everest Base Camp for several days doing this experiment. And so this was their baseline, 80%. They started doing the deep breathing, 6 breaths a minute. And then after 15 minutes, they stopped, they went back to normal, and they subsided back to that. So that might actually be an interesting experiment to do on a mountaintop somewhere with your oximeter. I'm sure it takes some training. You wouldn't want to start doing this the first time your oxygen system craps out, but it's worth doing. It's worth considering anyway. And They go on to say this practice can support relaxation, reduce stress, and enhance parasympathetic activation. That's the opposite of the fight or flight uh, urge. They call it feed or breed. So it can enhance parasympathetic activation, indirectly supporting better oxygen delivery. But thinking about it, this might be indistinguishable from the euphoria due to being hypoxic. Uh, so so anyway, I want to take a little break from this. You know, people talk about going into hyperbaric chambers. Uh, and of course, to do a hyperbaric chamber with the FAA, you need to have a class 3 medical, and I don't think many of us are going to do that in the Mosaic now that we have Mosaic. Oh, by the way, this is the paper, the folks from Milan, they talk about doing it in the Alps and 6 breaths per minute. Okay. It turns out you don't have to get a hyperbaric chamber. You can actually rent hyperbaric chambers. So, Dan, this is something to consider for Pasco. You can rent gizmos at sea level pressure, uh, provide less oxygen, more nitrogen. They have tents. You can go in, and the rentals are 4 weeks, minimum of 4 weeks, and so for about $1,000, one could do some high altitude testing perhaps to see how you respond.
But one person at a time ish?
Well, this one looks like you can have a few people, so it's on a bed, but and they have other systems too. If they have training masks for people who want to, you know, I guess run on treadmills at high altitudes for getting in shape. I mean, they sell these things. They advertise these things for people who want to get training. A few of our clients, the SEALs, med school,
I
Johnson
understand that
Johnson.
what the FAA now does, they've
Yeah.
got these traveling, huts basically that
Yes.
just deplete you of the oxygen in there without actually reducing pressure.
Yeah. And that's what this one does. Do they still require the class 3 medical?
Don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think they do because I went to one at Reed Hillview in 2017, and I
Oh,
don't think
really?
yeah, and I don't think I had a medical. Or maybe
Okay.
you're supposed to, but no, they didn't ask anybody, so they didn't care.
That's anyway. Well, if they don't require a medical, then it's worth going. Of course, I would have to shave my beard. That's the other obstacle. In this thing, I wouldn't have to shave my beard.
Larry,
So,
I don't know if you have to shave your beard for a nomobaric one.
uh, I, th I thought, you had to, but
Well, yeah, well, the chamber already had to, but this you're just in that saran wrap box, right?
yeah.
So I don't think you need to. I don't know. I'm not sure.
But I think when you get spacey, they put a oxygen mask on you. Anyway,
Or
right.
they just pull you out or break a hole in the saran wrap.
They have a trap door, right? Okay. So anyway, this is I find this kind of interesting, and I might try and experiment with it. Okay. So we talked about hypoxia. So now dehydration and heat stroke. Okay. So this plot is the effect of dehydration on performance, where performance on a vertical scale is somehow they quantified uh, scores on simple mental function tests such as word recognition, pattern tracing, and serial addition. Okay. And this is dehydration percentage in terms of weight. So this is surprisingly low. It's 1%, which is, ballpark 2 pounds, 2%. So, you know, 4 pounds out here is 8%, 8 pounds, 1 gallon down. So as you're down, 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 if you're up here, if you're normally an A student, out here you're kind of a B student. And if you're normally a C student, well, anyway, so, but then there's also, and this is from uh, an old soaring magazine, one of the aeromedical articles they had. And then these are, qualitative thirst symptoms versus the same percentage of dehydration. So
Russ is experiencing it.
what? Uh,
Russ was coughing.
okay. So yeah, so if you're 1% down, you feel normal. If you're 2% down, apparently you're starting to feel thirsty. 2.5% dry mouth. I'm sure we've all experienced bad mouth taste, maybe scratchy throat. That's kind of about them. After that, typically in here, you're really starting to drink a lot of water. Dizziness, trouble sleeping. Okay.
Hey, Larry, any idea how long does it take to recover if you're really dehydrated and you drink a bunch of water? When do you get back to normal mentally?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know either.
I would imagine it helps to chug water. I know sometimes when I'm in my RV up in the mountains after I've been there several days, I'll get up in the morning and I will feel dizzy, okay, sometimes, and I will chug a better part of, a big bottle of water, and I'll feel recovered pretty quickly. So I have a feeling water gets into your system fairly rapidly, but I have no expertise. So
And
So,
also, Bruce, also there's recommendations on, prepare yourself and be well hydrated, but then chug a little extra water before you head out onto the line if you're at a place in the Sierra, because the 20, 30, or 40 minutes between heading out to your glider and launching, you're gonna lose a bit of water.
mhm.
Yeah, one of the things that Ty used to say was he would say he wants to be almost ready to go to the bathroom when he's out on the line. When he's ready to fly, he should be almost ready to pee. Initially, just to make sure he's really hydrated before he takes off.
Yeah, and so there. Yeah, so you have to deal with the P factor, which we're getting to.
Larry, are
So
there two P factors? I just
yes,
realized that was a
depends
kind
on
of a
whether or
joke.
not you have an engine or propeller.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, both P factors apply to power planes. So, so symptoms of being less than 1% dehydrated, irregular light-colored urine, soft stool, easy to generate saliva. So how much water should you drink? And this I found surprising. It was one of these Dan Johnson articles from 24 years ago. And he was saying that, well, the place where you're really losing water is on the ground, waiting, hanging around. You can lose 300 to 600 milliliters per hour on the ground. And I can see how that's true, at trucking or air sailing when it's a cooking day. So, and then he said at altitude, it's considerably less, So, I mean, somewhere you're transitioning from low altitude to high altitude. And he was saying, once you're in the air, you know, only about 60 milliliters per hour, which is not that much. So, it's about 2 ounces or, quarter cup. That strikes me as low, but this is what he's saying is that the principal place you're going to get dehydrated is on the ground. But anyway, why do glider pilots get dehydrated? It's principally because, in my opinion, they don't want to deal with peeing during the flight. It's kind of very common with student pilots. The easiest solution to dealing with the P factor is to use adult diapers. And here I say, if we only had glider pilots who are women or astronauts, this would be a short discussion. Fact is, I typically wear a diaper when I'm flying, and I use it. It turns out it can be difficult the first time you try to use it. I have found, and I've heard that to be true too. So I'd advise people at air sailing camp is it requires training, just like anything else related to aviation. And what you need to do is put on a diaper, sit down in a recliner with a 6-pack of beer and turn on Netflix, and let nature take its course. And if your wife says later on you're drunk and you smell like an outhouse, just say, "Honey, I'm doing this for you." So anyway, so this is something I used to show it because it was true perhaps back in 2008 that NASCAR drivers used Depends, but apparently that's no longer true. So So if you've seen this before, I now retract it. This also has the anecdote about the astronaut lady from about 20 years ago who was on a mission to basically take out her boyfriend's girlfriend. And her training as an astronaut was to wear a diaper. And so in a tense situation, the training takes over. So I always defended the fact that she was wearing a diaper. Okay, so external male catheters are something you can use. Okay, they can be connected to a bag or ported directly overboard. These are actually ones that I've used, the so-called Gee Whiz, endorsed by Captain Kirk. Maybe they use them on the Enterprise. And the principal advantage of these is that they come off easily. I've used regular condom type catheters, and they're very effectively glued, which, at the end of the flight makes it kind of rough. So they have benefits. There are many benefits to using these, blah, 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 blah. It's ideal for, nowhere does it say, glider pilots and all that. And it's worth noting that according to AI, NASCAR drivers don't use catheters either. So, and what AI says NASCAR drivers do is they hold it. They use water management, and during pit stops, it's a pit stop. So anyway, uh, let me just take a little break here and switch.
You have to go to the bathroom, Larry?
No, he's suited up.
I'm, I can hold it for about one meeting's worth. Okay, so I bought some Gee Whizzes many years ago. They're a little bit pricey and they become more pricey. They're 11 bucks each. Uh, and they have various sizes. And of course, everyone buys the big size. And if you want a package of 10, it's a fortune. So I don't know if I'd really do that anymore. Amazon, of course, has a whole bunch of things, including these very impressive shorts. I'm not quite sure how they'd work with seat belts, and they probably wouldn't work if you have a crotch belt too. But anyway, there's a bunch of things that are cheaper on Amazon if you want to go that route. Okay. So returning back
Do we have
here.
a polling feature on Zoom? We
What?
want to run a poll to see what everybody uses.
Oh, what do people use? Well, I use
Yeah, is there
diapers.
a polling feature? I thought Zoom had a
Dan,
polling
Dan
feature.
can, if you're up for it, Dan, you can set up the polling feature. Maybe
I'll
hold
set
it,
up a poll and we'll get it going in a minute.
catheter, diapers, or other.
Okay, well, hang on the poll because okay. Diapers. Okay, so some people, I remember Prather was talking about this, that he pees uphill into a Ziploc bag and tosses it out the window. It requires a degree of dexterity I don't think I have. And then somewhere I saw a homebrew situation with a straw like this in a Ziploc bag. Okay, so now you can take your poll down.
I'm
Okay,
putting it together. Give a minute.
okay. And once again, these are the symptoms of being less than 1% dehydrated. Regular light-colored urine, soft stool, easy to generate saliva. And according to this, most of the dehydration occurs on the ground. And if you believe this, you don't need to drink much water flying, but maybe you're making up for dehydration on the ground. Okay.
Yeah, the do-it-yourself approach, what I had been told, which I've done a couple times when I've missed having the devices, and before I had the tubes to dump overboard, is you just take a diaper and you just throw it into the Ziploc, because
Okay.
free loose liquid is a toxic bomb, and you can get uh you can buy bags now that have the base of the baby diaper stuff in it, the absorbency stuff in it, and
They're
these are
go
very
bags.
large bags.
They're called go bags.
Yeah. So
A go bag. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I usually carry one with me, but the only time I used it was when I puked after when Harry was flying me around out of air sailing.
I remember I tried to use a just a plastic water bottle once, with a small screw top, and that was rough. So, so did you get the poll up, Dan? Hey, Dan?
One minute,
Okay.
found another solution.
yeah, I mean, in my observation, because I've flown with hundreds of people in my two-seater, is that it is not the device or method, it is the fact that you're reclined. That is the issue.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Well, Kempton, with two people, one can relax and take care of his needs while the other flies also.
That's a great benefit to a two-seater.
Right.
But if you're really reclined and you have a water bottle, it's a challenge, at least for me.
Well, turbulence, regardless, even if you have a closed circuit system, is a challenge.
That's true.
All right, working on launching the poll.
Okay.
And
Okay. I'll vote. I'll vote when I'm done. Okay.
all right.
Okay.
Okay, the poll is launched. Go for it.
Oh. Ta-da.
Is
Where do
anyone
we
seeing the
see that on
questions?
this?
There we
Oh, there
go.
it is. It's in front. Okay.
Um, what's a travel john? Is that just a
It-
bag with crystal in it?
Yeah,
Absorbent stuff?
yep, it's a prepackaged baggie with the gel in it.
Okay, can I pick more? Can I only pick, oh, single choice? Can I pick two though?
Yep.
I mean, will it let me?
So what's
Uh,
it called?
Didn't let me.
It's called a travel John
It
here.
won't let me. How did you do
So
it? Oh, those. Oh, I see. Yes, yes. I know what they are. Yes, yes. Because I use a catheter and equivalent to a travel john. Can you hear me? What am I doing here?
yeah, we can hear you. The nice thing about these is depending on the brand that you buy, they come in an outer bag which has a Ziploc seal on it.
Yeah.
All
Huh.
right, so we have an even split between catheter and adult diaper with a P tube in the glider coming in just behind Ziploc baggie.
Can you
So
show that?
let's see if I can show that. Um, let's end the poll and share the results. Am I sharing the results?
Right. Yep.
There we go.
Ziploc baggie, 21%.
That
Huh.
surprises me.
I know. More power to them. So
How many people are on the call?
We have 24
Four.
people on the call.
how many voted?
19.
Okay.
Well, we might have a woman on the call,
Well, it
And
could be
I
Which
didn't
would-
vote because I can't vote at my own poll.
but a woman may be different though,
okay. Okay.
There we go. Okay. Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody.
Yeah, so while you're looking, I went on Amazon to look at other things, and so there are the bags. There's lots of these things, Jay.
Hmm?
Anyway,
But some of those bags are pretty big. I mean, when you look at them, some are, I think, 12 and 16 ounces.
oh yeah.
So that's pretty big.
Well, you'd be surprised how much you can pee if you
No,
don't.
no, I don't disagree with that. It's just that I'd rather use a small bag many times than a giant bag. And so I put it on hold and then bring it back into service, as I'm flying.
Something to be careful about when you're using those bags, I've been told by a fellow pilot, is that he once had the bag down around his ankles, and he got some air in the bag, and it inflated so much as he went up in altitude, he was having a little difficulty moving his foot around and using the pedals. I think that was a catheter bag that fell down his pants
Right.
towards his foot.
Mhm. There's a humorist named David Sedaris who has a good a good routine on oh God, on one of these catheters coupled with a bag and going to a football stadium. Anyway, so okay, so special emphasis aeromedical factors for Sierra Nevada. It gets cold at high altitudes, and so don't fly in shorts and flip-flops. If it's 80 degrees at 4,000 feet, it's going to be 40 degrees at 14,000 feet and maybe 24 degrees at 18,000 feet. And finally, dress to land out. Dress as if you will land in a hostile environment far away from assistance. Once again, no shorts and flip-flops flying out there. And then, coming to an end here, there's hypoxia, dehydration, stress, fatigue, in-flight nourishment I didn't talk about, but if you start getting hangry or so, they make you stupid. And they tend to make you stupid at the highest workload part of the flight. And I'll close with an anecdote. I read that there was some pilot who, you know, he didn't want to deal with the P factor much, but he finally had to, and he had a Ziploc bag. And so towards the end of the flight, he undid his seat belts, peed in the bag. I guess he tossed it through the window. Continued the flight. It was a great flight. At the end of the flight, he did a barrel roll or did a roll to celebrate. That's when he realized he hadn't put his seat belts back on, and he fell through the canopy and had to parachute down. So anyway, don't get stupid at the end of the flight. Okay, so that's what I have, Dan.
Thank
Hey,
you,
Larry,
Larry.
one comment. I don't know if I think everybody does this, but I don't turn off my oxygen until I land.
Yeah,
And I think everybody does that.
right.
So
Any
on that note
questions?
about the
More
oxygen
questions?
is that uh, if you land near sunset or even slightly after sunset, if you don't, that's the best time and that's the most important time to stay on oxygen because your depth perception and your color perception that's when you need it the most. And lacking oxygen during the day for that part of your vision, you don't really notice it that much. I mean, I don't know if you have comments on that, Larry, but that's what I was told and
Okay.
that's what I practice.
Yeah, I've heard about the color. I never heard about the depth perception. Huh.
Well, thank goodness Williams now has stripes on their runway because I landed when they didn't have stripes and
Oh,
just refinished the runway and it's a wonderful black and it looked like you're just going into this black hole in the earth. And so your ability to know when to flare was pretty
huh.
poor.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Mhm.
Well, Larry, thank you very, very much for hosting this presentation.
Okay.